Good evening, everybody. We have two study sessions tonight, and I will call this study session to order. It is the Highway 5 at MSP Airport update from Minda, and I'll pass it to our City Manager, Rodriguez.
Thank you, Mayor. Tonight we have MnDOT here to present. It's an informational presentation, and it's on Highway 5. It will be a chance for council members to ask questions, and particularly about the local traffic impacts. And I'll let our transportation engineer, Jack Bros, introduce MnDOT.
Yeah, and I'm going to maybe expand. I think one of the key things that's exciting that they're actually here to talk a lot more about the communication plan surrounding how they're going to communicate this project because it does change access to the airport. And so we have from MnDOT, we have Aaron, who's the project manager, and April is the MnDOT area manager for all projects around Richfield. So I'll just let you guys walk through this.
You want to say anything? All right. So I'm Aaron Tagg with MnDOT, West Area Engineer. We're seeing this area. So we have this year, this construction season, now that we're in 2020, a big project around the airport. And I can now tell everyone that we're going to have a special webpage for this project because of the impacts, and it is aroundtheairport.com. So hopefully everyone has an easy one to remember. So a little background on exactly what we're doing. This is really a preservation project, both for pavement and bridges. From Terminal 1 up to the Mississippi River, we are doing what we call a concrete overlay or reconstruction. A lot of times when people hear overlay, they think of asphalt or bituminous overlay. You know, you take off a couple inches and put back. When we talk about a concrete overlay, we're essentially building a new road on top of the old road. In sections where we don't have the height clearance to be able to do that, we're actually, having to go back and reconstruct that portion of the road. And this has, a long lifetime, so it'll be another, 20 to 30 years before we're back in this section doing pavement preservation work, and that will be much more minor work than what we're doing this summer. We also have 12 bridges that we're going to be working on, either redecks or repairs of those bridges, concentrated at the 62-5 intersection, the Terminal 1 interchange, or the 5 and 494 interchange. So you can see those there. And then on the southern end of the project, we're going to be doing concrete pavement repair. So it's not quite as invasive or as complicated as the work to the north. And this will give us another 10 to 20 years out of the pavement before we would come in and do an asphalt overlay over this section. We've broken the project up into 3 stages. And I'll go through each of the stages and kind of what the traffic impacts are with those. But stage 1 is the longest. There's a short, about month-long stage 2, and then a couple months for the last stage of the project. We have the contractor on board right now, but we haven't really started the discussions with them about exactly how they're going to tackle this project. So some of these dates could change. We do have a project completion date of the Friday before MEA week, which is October 9th. So that's the completion date. So trying to avoid that heavy travel week that we usually see in October. Trying to get this project done in 1 year so that we're not impacting the airport for 2 years, along with just kind of the complicated geometry of the interchanges and the geography of the area with the bluff makes it really challenging to keep traffic going in all directions at all time. So during the first stage of the project, we completely close eastbound Highway 5 from 494 across the river. And so during this time, we have to detour traffic into and out of in and out of the airport. And essentially, during this project, we are using the 484 77 62 5 loop or the 484 35E 62 5 loop to kind of funnel traffic. We're either kind of doing it clockwise, or counterclockwise. So you'll see in other stages we kind of reverse those flows. So for example, if you were in Richfield and you were coming to the airport, normally you might take 494 to eastbound 5 and come in that way. During this stage of the project, you would need to go up 77, 62 in this way. Stage 2 is very similar to stage 1 with some differences at the 62-5 interchange. So this map shows what ramps are closed during the first stage of the project. And essentially it's the ramps that are connected to eastbound 5 because eastbound 5 is closed. During the second stage of the project, we have reconstructed the work on the eastbound side, but we are going to continue to serve westbound traffic out of 5, so that traffic's getting moved over to the eastbound side, so we have to close these additional ramps. What this really means for traffic that is coming in or out of St. Paul on 5 is they don't have that connection to 62, and they have to continue down 5. So this is about a month-long portion of the project. And then the last stage of the project is a closure of westbound 5 from 62 to 494. At this point of the project, we have everything done from 62 to the river. And then again, using those loops in the opposite direction to get people to and from the airport. So as we've looked at this project, this is a very different project than what we usually do. The users are very different than what we usually do. Usually we have a project, it might have a lot of impacts, but you have people who use the corridor. A lot of them are frequent users of the corridor. You have maybe a bad first week as people try and figure out, what their new route is, kind of sort themselves out, things balance out. Here we have, 20, 30,000 airport users every day who might not come that frequently. It might have been, 5-10 years since the last time they came to the airport. They might be from out of town and they're returning their rental car to the airport. So they might not even know, might not have ever done it before. So we know it's a very different project than what we usually have. So we've done a lot more kind of analysis than what we often do. We've looked at origin destination data about what kind of users are using the different corridors, looking at existing traffic data, and we've done some traffic modeling to kind of give ourselves at least an estimate of how bad we think traffic might be. Did you have a question?
Yeah, I wanted to ask you, okay, so we're in Richfield, so if you go down 66th Street and you turn at the end, you turn to the right and you can follow that frontage road, will that be available?
That frontage road that's along 77,
Yeah,
yep, on the east side of 77, that won't be impacted at all.
okay, so we can go from here,
Yep.
there and go directly to the airport.
Yeah, but you'll have to get on to, because you can't use that to do a direct connection to Terminal 1, because really the only way in and out of Terminal 1 is from Highway 5.
What were you saying, Mary?
You can get to Terminal 2 that way, but
Yes.
not Terminal 1.
Oh,
So let's see, I'll go back here.
Councilmember Seppel, did you have a question?
Well, he can finish up.
Okay, great.
So getting into Terminal 1 and out, the only access is from 5. If you were to go down to Terminal 2 over here, there's access along over here to Terminal 2. But for Terminal 1, that is only access.
So I had a question on the detours. When we were here a few weeks ago talking to MnDOT about the 494 visioning process in the Transportation Commission, one of the things that was brought up is that we needed to make sure that Crosstown 62 was functioning efficiently before it became a detour. So do you feel comfortable that 62 is functioning in an effective manner so it can take the additional load of that detour for this project?
So we did a lot of traffic data modeling. What we've learned from that is it's showing that especially in the AM peaks, we're seeing it would take you an additional 25 to 30 minutes to get to the airport. So we are seeing a lot of additional congestion. I expect that on 62 we will see a lot of additional congestion. There are, and I'll touch on this in a little bit, but there are some mitigation measures that we're looking at to provide a little bit of excess capacity during the project in spots where we can. 62 is tough in this section because there are a number of spots, particularly some bridges where there's just not the physical space to, make it 3 lanes instead of 2 lanes. So we're really limited by that. And so it's really helped us identify some of where we have problem spots, and then how are we going to communicate all this to the public. And we kind of have a 3-pronged approach to this. Is the first step is know before you go. We want everyone to know that there's a project going on around the airport. So and it's not just people in the metro. We just had a meeting earlier today with our communication strategy team about this is something that needs to really blanket the whole region. Delta kind of looks at it as like their customer base for the airport is 5 to 6 hours away. So we want as many people to know within that kind of 5-hour range that there is significant work going on around the airport, so that people have it in their head that there's construction at the airport. I know it's going to be impactful to my travel, and I need to go and look to see what's going on and how I need to prepare for that. So then the second part of that is having the information available so that people can make good informed decisions, so they can give themselves the time they need and have kind of know what their detour route is before they go to the airport. And then the final part is, as they're on their way to the airport, making sure that we're doing the best we can to give them real-time traffic information. So using our overhead signs, supplementing that with additional construction signs that can kind of give them information at kind of critical decision points, like should I take 35E, should I take 35W if you're coming from the south? What's my, what are the traffic conditions for the different ways to get to Terminal 1? So I mentioned our strategic communication group has been meeting for about 9 months now. We have a variety of agency stakeholders as part of that, as well as private stakeholders, businesses, kind of around the airport, 494 area. Delta Airlines is part of it. A lot of people from the MAC, the cities and counties kind of around the airport area. We just got a communication a couple months ago, consultant on board that is going to help us with this process and really provide a lot of resources to getting the word out. And so that's been very useful to have them on board over the last couple months. So know before you go. Our goal is, like I said, reach as many people as we can, communicate early and often so people hear this message over and over and over, so it gets kind of logged into their head. Keep people informed about the detours as best we can, and create, using our website, kind of easy to use tools. Some of these can be, some of these detours are a little complicated, making sure that we convey kind of a little bit complex information to people as easily as we can. So we're going to be out there a number of ways. We're going to have that promotional website, aroundtheairport.com. We'll have email, typical MnDOT stuff like email. The airlines, we expect that at least some of them will provide information. So like when you check in for your flight, say, here's your e-ticket, and by the way, there's construction going on around the airport. Go to this website to get more information, using our partners to get the word out. Like I mentioned, highway signage, and we're going to have an aggressive paid media campaign as well to try and get that additional information out to folks.
So, Jack, are we going to have all this information on the city website too?
Yes, we've been participating in this process, and so it'll be more of a, I'll just say it's a push. So we'll just take everything that we're getting and push it out through all our channels. That's our intent.
Okay, good, thank you.
We have a lot of key audiences that we've been talking with people about, kind of your typical ones, local governments, local large employers, commuters, transit riders, but then also, the air travelers, the airport employees, visitors. There's not only visitors at the airport, but a lot of kind of auxiliary visitor things, hotels and rental car companies and stuff that are around the airport that we need to reach. And the promotional website, aroundtheairport.com, is going to be interactive. It will have tools that help people figure out the best way to get to airport. We're going to, encourage people to think about alternatives getting to the airport, like using the light rail. The light rail won't be impacted by this construction project at all. So, it will continue to provide kind of a reliable service to the airport. So our timeline, right now we're kind of in that information gathering stage and starting to put out our kind of first promotional materials. We're learning a lot about kind of the operation and businesses around the airport. So it's as we've kind of gone through this process, it's interesting, learning about how all these different businesses around the airport operate, and your Ubers and the rental car companies, and they have very specific, really time-sensitive kind of operations that really require them getting to different parts of the airport. That they're working with us. They're going to have to kind of figure out how to make those operations work. In mid to late February, we will have kind of the soft launch of that website. Right now, if you go to the website, it provides some very basic information about the project, but those useful tools I just talked about are going to be launched in the mid to late February timeframe. In mid-March, we're going to have our MnDOT construction kickoff. That's kind of an annual event that we have to kick off the MnDOT construction season. Usually we have that in April. This year we're moving it up to March, kind of specifically for this project. We kind of see this as one of the major highlighted projects for MnDOT this year. And then in April timeframe, we'll see construction start and detours start. From a mitigation, I didn't touch on that too much. There's going to be a few mitigation things done in the northbound 77 to eastbound 62 ramp. Right now, you do that and it merges onto 62 pretty quickly. We're going to create an auxiliary lane between that and 28th, so they give traffic more time to kind of merge onto 62. If you're headed eastbound on 62 and you're going to go westbound on 5 here, I'll go back to the map quick. If you're headed eastbound on 62 and you're going westbound on 5, right now in that ramp it merges down to 1 lane. It used to be 2, but there was kind of a weird merge condition, so we restriped that a number of years ago to be 1. That's going to be restriped to be 2 lanes again, and that lane's going to extend all the way to the Terminal 1 exit. And right now that Terminal 1 exit is 1 lane. That will become 2 lanes. Coming out of the airport, both directions right now, it's only 1 lane in each direction. Those will be temporarily reconstructed to allow for 2 lanes. And so you will always have 2 lanes in and 2 lanes out of the airport, which is what we need to handle the capacity that wants to go in and out.
Councilmember Whalen?
Before you mentioned the 25 extra minutes metric, is that with or without those mitigation factors?
That is with the mitigation.
Okay.
So Councilmember Supple spoke to this, and I know you just spoke a little bit about this, but are there other detour issues that you've identified and other remedies, or specific spot mitigation that you're doing on that detour to prepare?
Yeah, so those are the ones I mentioned are ones that we're doing. We will be watching closely to see where we have, I guess, traffic impacts that are larger than what we expect. And some of those we're looking at ahead of time to see if, we kind of have a backup plan. If those do happen, if there's something that we could do, maybe it's a ramp closure or restriping something to make something work better. There are probably other, as there always are in construction, detours, or not detours, construction impacts that, are worse than what we expected and really weren't on our radar, and we'll just have to deal quickly with those when they arise.
Any other questions or comments from council members? I don't think I have any either. 1 second. Okay. I think that's it then. Looks like we don't have any other questions. So, in terms of checking, I'm assuming that it's going to be, as this continues forward, we'll be checking in with staff and residents because those detours are going to affect us, and then checking in with you all to try to make those adjustments if needed, if we find that there's impacts to look at in Richfield, right?
Yeah, and I would also add just the communication, so the chamber, all the different types of outreach that you might find important, that will help us push the data as staff to the right groups that maybe should be hearing this, the schools, et cetera. What groups do we have that when they have a notice or a change, that we have a pretty good effective communication to Richfield?
Excellent, thank you. Councilmember Supple.
You just triggered a thought. Does this affect going to the Fort Snelling Historical Society and all that? Have they been made aware of this?
Yeah, so we've actually had a couple meetings with the Historical Society, and this will impact them. For people being able to get, they're particularly concerned about the April-May timeframe when they have a lot of school groups coming, and those buses are on a fairly time-sensitive schedule to start their tours on time. I guess they have tours every 10 minutes or so that are starting. So we're working closely with them to help them get the right information they need to get out to the school districts and to the bus companies, so that we can at least provide them the best information about how much extra time they need to give themselves and what the detour routes are.
Thank you. Great, thank you so much for coming, and we'll be in touch on pushing the communications out and seeing how it impacts Richfield. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, April.
Thank you.
My check.
All right, we will begin our next study session. I will pass it to City Manager Katie Rodriguez on owner-only utility billing.
Thank you, Mayor. We have a presentation tonight on owner-only billing. This is just to explain the concept to you, get your feedback on it, and possibly consensus to make the change. Basically, we're trying to solve some problems because when you have a renter that gets the water bill and then you have an owner that is responsible for the water bill, there can be communication problems. There can also be problems if the renter, if say there's a toilet leaking or something, has to pay a really high water bill even though it's not their responsibility to keep the toilet in order. So we're trying to change it so that the responsible party is the one that's getting the bill and is getting the information. There's no great approach to this in that it's perfect and solves every problem, but we believe that this is the most transparent and clear, and I will turn it over to Director Regis.
Thank you. I've also got with me Russ Lukey, our utility superintendent, and Mike LaFond, our utility billing staff person. These two know a lot more about this than I do, but that's why I got him here, to help me out and stuff. But as the city manager said, what this would provide would be some efficiencies in what Mike does. I'll just go through the list here. Be fewer move in and move out process by Mike. It reduce his time, reduce public works staff time to obtain final readings, and it also reduce printing and mailing expenses for final bills. And also, to move on here, it also ensure that the owner receives the quarterly utility bill, and he has an opportunity, or she has an opportunity, to pay it prior to certification. Reduce Mike's time in generating certification letters for unpaid balances, which would reduce printing and mailing expenses for certification letters. I think last summer was the first mailing out of certification. We mail like 1,200 letters. There's a lot of, probably how many accounts were 1,200 accounts essentially? Yeah. So, I think by doing this, it will reduce that number. It also allows for a cleanup of utility accounts. Right now, if a tenant moves out, we don't always receive that information. So we'll bill the old tenant, then find out that that tenant's no longer there, so we have to cancel the bill and rebill again. So it creates a lot of confusion and a lot of wasted staff time in doing that. It also eliminate, calls from property owners, checking out on payments, making sure their renters are making payments. Also, owners a lot of times call and dispute late fees because the tenant did not pay. So this would eliminate some of those, and also eliminate the issue of a renter moving in and out of a property without paying a final bill unbeknownst to the property owner. Then the unpaid bill now becomes responsibility of the property owner, and they're, Mike can attest to this, they're not happy about that. They also eliminate utility accounts with duplicate PID numbers. Statistically, some of the residential rental properties right now, we have 604 through the last certification process, we had 60% of final bills certified were from rental properties, and 38% of active accounts certified were generated from rental properties. Richfield is part of the LOGIS Consortium, and 75% of the cities in the LOGIS Consortium require owner-only billing. Some of the other metro cities that do it, for example, Bloomington, Robbinsdale, Apple Valley, Crystal, New Hope. Richfield's not really new to the game here. We're kind of late to the game. We're not so, and I know this is something too that has been talked about through, with Butch and his staff and prior staff about doing this. So this has been going on for several years. We've been thinking about doing this, and now we're trying to do it. How would it affect the property owners? Well, basically, all bills now would go to the property owner, property manager, just as it would with an apartment building. So it's really no big change in that regard. Then the property owner would pass the utility charges onto the tenant, calculated at their discretion. Again, same thing as if with an apartment building, same type of deal. Mike has looked into this, and our information shows that property owners are skeptical about this at first, but they come to prefer it because the owner-only billing puts them in control over their properties, since rental accounts historically have a higher incidence of a low pay or a slow pay or non-payment. And oftentimes the owners are left with, handling the bill and the penalties and interest and things like that. You guys have anything to add or anything? I do believe that, this is a positive move. I think it would be a good move to do. I think it would, like I said, create a lot of efficiencies in the utility billing process, and it would make it a lot better. It would, definitely reduce costs over time, and probably improve cash flow for the utility fund, as we would see payments from the owners, not renters and things like that. Not that renters don't pay, but sometimes that is an issue. I think that's pretty much all I have. That's my spiel. Any questions or anything?
Thank you, Director Regis. Councilmember Supple?
I just wanted a clarification. You alluded a couple times to apartment buildings. So is this only applicable to single-family homes that are rented? Are all the apartment buildings already done this way?
Yes.
Because that was a concern I had of what the transition would be. So this is only single-family. What about duplexes?
Duplexes would be part of that too. We would, we'd also do duplexes.
Okay, so who's...
And commercial buildings also.
Okay, so it's commercial buildings, single and duplexes, and anything with more occupants than that's already owner?
Yeah, like all apartment buildings are all owner-only building.
Right, yeah, right. Since like apartment buildings, their units do not have water meters per every unit in the building. So we would just bill them out as one unit or one building, and then they would handle that on their own.
And they pass the utility costs on to their renters. It's part of their monthly rental fee.
Okay, that's helpful because I didn't understand that and I was wondering what the logistics were going to be if we were going to have to do this for all the apartment buildings, but sounds like it's already done.
Councilmember Whalen?
Yeah, as you know, I already emailed you to clarify that piece. I think the statistics obviously don't lie. I think the importance of doing this from a staff perspective is clear. I guess, so I still agree with the process or that we should be looking at doing this. I support doing this. Even in this report that you brought today, I guess I'm still a little frustrated that this is more of a trend in a lot of decisions that we don't have like renters listed as like, you just said it, but like we have impacts on staff, impacts on property owners, and that it feels like the impact on renters is a little bit of an afterthought. And I realize that we're doing this for the purpose of efficiencies for staff time, for consistency both with other cities and with, like we were just talking about, with what happens in apartment buildings. But I guess in considering this, my very first consideration would have been, what is the experience going to be like for our residents? And so I think we have now answered that through discussion, but I guess I would just ask that in the future that be more of a priority in kind of the various staff reported pieces.
I guess for the renters, or
yeah,
because the effect on the renters is going to be no different than what apartment renters have now. It'll be no different than that.
Right, but there'll still be a transition period.
Oh, yes, of course, there'll be a transition for the renters and also for the owners. Yes.
Yeah.
Mayor?
Yep, City Manager Rodriguez.
Thank you. I think that's a valid point, but I just want to make a couple clarifications. The owners could be our residents. So I take your point that we did not discuss the impacts on the renters, but the owners could be our residents. So I just want to clarify that. And then also, we're trying to bring consistency to the responsibility. And so you're communicating with those parties that are responsible for it. And the way that we enforce our billing, because we don't do water shutoffs, we do the assessment. Ultimately, those unpaid bills are going to go back to the owner. It would be inconsistent if we did owner-only billing and then had water shutoffs, because then you're shutting off the water for a renter that may not be, they're not the responsible party. And so that's putting them in an awkward situation. So we're trying to make that responsibility consistent.
Councilmember Garcia?
So in other words, so a property manager at their discretion would decide who pays. You could easily, let's say there's 100 people in a building. They could just divvy it up 100 ways, or?
Well, that would be similar to what they do now with apartment buildings.
Okay. So in other words, if you're more of a saver of water and more into the environmental stuff, and your neighbor next door is just the opposite, you'd still have to pay the same?
Well, I don't know, because this really doesn't apply to the apartment buildings. This would be renters in single-family homes or commercial buildings, or something like duplexes and stuff. So, and also with the ordinance has been written, the change into it is that if a tenant wants a copy of the bill, we can send them a copy of the bill, so they would have an idea of what their quarterly consumption is and stuff like that.
City Manager Rodriguez?
Just to clarify, Councilmember Garcia, the owner could build the utility into the rent, but they could also directly charge them for it. And that would be an advantage for the renter, again, that they could get a copy of the bill to know what they owe.
Yeah, that seems more fair.
Other questions or comments from council members on this? No? All right. Thank you very much for coming and presenting. Oh, Councilmember, City Manager Rodriguez, sorry.
Sorry, Mayor, I just want to get
back to you.
I want to get into the habit when we're trying to get consensus from council is summarizing what I've heard and next steps. So I think I heard that you would like to, for future staff reports, make sure that we capture the impact on the renter. I heard that, but I have not heard anything negative about the going forward with the new process of owner-only billing.
Correct.
Okay, so, and we'll send you a timeline for next steps then.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, City Manager. Thank you.